I like that. I like that. And maybe I'll talk about that more some other time. But this time I want to talk about um, something Norman Fisher said. And he was talking about the four foundations of mindfulness, just briefly in the context of whatever he was discussing. And the fourth foundation, which is a series of lists, the five hindrances, the seven awakening factors, the six, um, thinking of now, and the full truths, uh, as a total. Uh, Goldstein's call them categories, which I liked. Um, but Norman called them, and I not the function more thing. And as we
Brian,
practice, yeah.
can you repeat what Norman called them? Your internet is you're blipping in and out, so we're not getting a clear message. So just
Oh,
what did Norman call them again?
I seem to have a wonky internet connection this morning. I already went out and came back in, and it helped a little, but um, so in discussing the fourth foundation of mindfulness, Norman used the words mind. I can see you all froze. I'll try again. Maybe the universe does not want me to transmit this. Patterns of mind. Did that come through? Good. Which I think is really an accurate description that all of these lists, the hindrances, awakening factors, all of these are patterns of mind. Um, so I really like that a lot. Um, so I came home and I was trying to see search on the internet to see if I could find some things that related to that. And I came upon something from, oh, how could I blank his name? The guy who used to be the director of the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies. Uh, okay. I am still, huh?
Huh? Joseph?
No,
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 no.
no. And
Andy, Andy, okay, whatever. Anyway, a great scholar, um, very, very much a scholar, a Buddhist scholar. And I came upon this writing where he's talking about two central words that are part of the Satipatthana Sutta. So I'm going to read just like a little something here, and and this is a refrain. This is part of a refrain in the Satipatthana Sutta. It says, "In regard to the body, you abide contemplating the body internally, contemplating the body externally, and contemplating the body both internally and externally." Contemplating was the key word that he brought up, saying that he didn't like the translation of the into the word contemplating, not because it was inaccurate, but because it was inaccurate for Western audiences. he was saying that in his experience, contemplating for most people in our culture means thinking. And that's clearly not the Buddha, what the Buddha was talking about, was that you don't abide thinking about the body. So I'll pause there and I'll say the second word um, is one that we're familiar with. And so, for instance, it says, and how do you, in regard to the body, abide contemplating the body? Well, breathing in long, you know breathing in long. Breathing out long, you know breathing out long. Now, this is familiar to us because it's also part of the Anapanasati Sutta is to say no. And again, he says that to Western audience, knowing means you have access to a body of knowledge. And in discussing the Anapanasati Sutta's use of the word knowing, I've said very frequently, in this case, it means being conscious of, being aware of, focusing your attention on. That's what knowing means. So when you abide contemplating, what does contemplating mean then? And I think both of these words, both of these, the uses of these words, are in some ways very similar. In some ways, very similar. I think the difference is that when you use the word contemplating, we're focusing a little bit on the intentionality of moving your attention to. So when we're contemplating the breath, we're moving our attention to the breath. When we are knowing the breath, we are conscious, having moved our attention there, we are conscious of the experience. We are aware that the experience is occurring in this moment. So neither of these, of course, are about thinking. We don't think we're breathing. We don't think about moving our intention, because thinking in and of itself is an action which we are conscious of, or not conscious of, often. And so you could definitely say, give an instruction, I want you to move your intention to be conscious of the arising of thinking, the presence of thinking, the disappearance of thinking. You could do that. That would be perfectly good instruction. But that's not the instruction the Buddha is giving by using the word contemplating. And you're not moving your attention to thinking about. Rather, you're moving your intention, what you're choosing to focus your attention on. And you're moving that to all the different foundations of mindfulness. And so what does this have to do with Norman's patterns of mind, right? So perhaps one way of looking at our practice is to look at our practice as intentionally uh, moving our attention to directly experience the patterns of mind that are occurring in this moment. So then the next question that comes is, um, what is the benefit of identifying a pattern of mind as, one of the hindrances, one of the awakening factors, um, noticing that the pattern of mind is flowing from the senses. What's the advantage of all this? And my answer to that question is that um, it takes us closer to the root of what's occurring. That most of our day-to-day experience is quite far from the root of what's occurring. Most of our day-to-day experience takes place at a very superficial level. Mostly we're, just thinking and feeling and, um, you know, creating stories, creating understandings, creating patterns of thought that which are different than patterns of mind. Patterns of thought are shallow. They're shallow because they come into existence and disappear um, without ever really when you're sitting outside and you hear bird song, um, it has an impact emotionally. You might think about it, but the bird song comes and goes. And even though we often seek meaning, oh, that's a warning cry, that's a mating cry, that's a joy in a sunny day cry, you know, whatever it might be. We assign meaning to things. That's a really loud bird. It's called a gas hawk. Yeah. I actually live near an airport where you can go on rides on 100-year-old biplanes. And that's somebody going on a ride. Um, so these sounds come and go, and we make stories. I just made up a story about that sound, maybe multiple stories. Um, I just invented a meaning. How come that sound was there? Someone's taking a ride on an old plane. But fortunately, um, I really don't think any of that has much to do with me. People do make little transient sounds into stories about, I could make a story about liking or disliking living somewhere where planes fly overhead. I could make a story about wanting or not wanting to fly on the plane. And I could give those stories meaning about who I am, what my self-identity is. Um, but none of that really is going to have the impact that watching thoughts has. That when our thoughts occur about what we're doing with our lives, what we're doing today, how our relationship with this person or that person is or is not, um, all those kinds of self-identities that are created from the thinking are really impactful. They have quite an impact on us. And it's interesting that they have an impact on us because they're just creations. We just form them out of events that are occurring. That's why they're called formations, mental formations. So the Buddha suggests that if you had a category, a name for that pattern, let's say that you wanted to give it the name desire. Oh, I really would love to go on an airplane ride on an old airplane like that. Oh, I'd love to own one. Oh, could you imagine flying down to Philadelphia whenever I wanted to go there? Oh, that would be amazing. I could fly down there. I could give people a ride. Ooh, look, Michelle's all excited. She wants a ride on my plane. And I could take it. Uh, and the Buddha says, since our goal is to quiet the mind, to steady the mind, to calm the mind, how easy it is to notice, oh, that's wanting that arose. Wanting is a pattern of mind. It's one of the hindrances. It's one of the fetters. It's one of a lot of categories. Wanting. Just wanting. And I can feel wanting in my body. I can feel the energy of it. I can feel the way it impacts the flow of my mind and body. It's a pattern. It's similar whether it's wanting an airplane or wanting a day that's less humid. It's also something I want. And the pattern in my mind is similar. And becoming familiar with that pattern, what the pattern of desire, lust, wanting, whatever term fits best for you, becoming familiar with it can free you from the entire formation that you might want to create around the whole thing. You just notice, oh, look, the arising of desire. And you relax. The arising of desire is quite normal. Happens, however many thousands of times every day. It's not something that you have to get rid of. Rather, it's something you have to be mindful of. You have to know this particular pattern of mind. And in the airplane story, knowing that the entirety of it started with activity at the ear sense door. It was just a sound. I interpreted the sound and made an entire story out of a sound. It would not be the first time for me to discover that sound wasn't actually caused by what I thought it was. That it was actually a different thing that made the sound that I interpreted as this. And the next thing you know, there's like a whole thing going on in my mind, this whole story creation, forming a whole pattern of life from a sound. And, oh, right, the sound was not correct. The most famous sound not correct story that Dharma teachers like is the story of people moving into a new house that they had bought. A house they knew, not that the house was new, it was new to them. It was an older house. And they kept hearing a bird chirping in the basement. And they got really worried about it. Wait, maybe the bird's coming in and out. Does that mean there's a hole somewhere in the basement? Or maybe the bird's trapped in the basement. We need to go rescue it. And they got all worked up about this bird. Finally, they went down to the basement to find it and discovered it was an old smoke detector with a dead battery intermittently chirping. The Buddha used to use the example of seeing a stick and thinking it was a snake. Same thing, you know. When we recognize simply words like aversion and desire, wanting and not wanting, and move at the root of that rather than the proliferation of formation creating, story creating, our lives get simpler and our decision making gets sharper and more productive because we spend less time lost in the content creation and more time simply recognizing what's happening. Sometimes known as clear seeing. What we choose to be conscious of, because we have choice in the matter, what we set our intention to be conscious of has a tremendous impact on our lives. We are capable of moving our focus of awareness and being conscious of quite a variety of things in any single moment. That choosing by the Buddha is called right effort. The effort to keep our focus on that which is wholesome, healing, heart opening, connecting with each other. Choosing that focus and choosing to move away from and not continue patterns of mind that separate us, isolate us, close our hearts, tense our bodies. Of course, doing that creates vulnerability. And we do live in a dangerous world, so it's very tempting to try to be as shielded as possible. Being shielded is a good idea when things are dangerous. The problem arises when we get so habituated to shielding that it doesn't come down, it doesn't open up when things are not dangerous, which is frankly a lot of the time. In order to be able to have those defensive shields be fluid, arising when it's appropriate and dissipating when it's appropriate, we need to practice. We need to be able to see clearly. We need to be able to know when shields are present. We need to know what it is that we are conscious of moment after moment after moment. And that's what we practice for. We don't practice just because, I don't know what the just because. We practice so that we can be aware moment after moment after moment of what is actually occurring in our experience. And then we use these techniques that the Buddha is teaching, these techniques of being aware of the core pattern of mind that is present, and being aware of the impact of that particular pattern of mind without having to elaborate it into a story, without having to form worlds to live in based on patterns. So maybe it's a good idea that we practice. So let's do that now. Breathing in, I'm conscious and aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm conscious and aware that I'm breathing out. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. Breathing in, know breathing in. Breathing out, know breathing out.